everyone. Feel free to raise a question. You could put it in the chat box as we go along, or even if you want to speak up, you can unmute and then speak up as I go along, giving you what I thought I would do during this next few moments is to think aloud of my journey in healthcare, and then give you, I think that would give you a background of what we should be looking for, and um, how the market trends are in the past a decade or so, how it has been and how it would be in future. So as per the introduction given by Tiwari ji, I was initially a hardcore drug design person. So I started off my career in healthcare as a drug design, drug development, medicinal chemist. So there, as most of you may be knowing, we look at. I don't have a presentation. I hope it should not. Please do listen to me carefully because there may not be any visual support. So I request all of you to listen to what I'm saying with a little more apt attention. The reason I couldn't get on to the presentation was that my thoughts, I couldn't get them together to, I was going in 2-3 versions of presentations I did make, but somehow I wasn't satisfied. So I thought I will take it as I go along, and maybe this will allow me to um, discuss with you of my journey as well as the various challenges that we are facing as healthcare practitioners. Okay, so as a pharmacologist or as a medicinal chemist, the way we design a drug or a cure for any disease state is we look at the biochemical pathways that are actually either upregulated or downregulated in that. So etiology of a disease, we say. So we have the etiology of the disease at a molecular level, and then we try to, invariably the methodology is we tend to interfere with the existing biological pathways. The natural system that is there is interfered with. That's the very important word that you need to note. It's interfered with all the new chemical entities or drug molecules or the medicines that are available as allopathic drugs. So the whole approach is interfering with the natural processes, and therefore this interference is, and all natural processes at a cellular level are all interconnected. It's such a big mesh of things. It's not a mess, it's a mesh. MESH. Okay, it's a mesh of interconnections in the cellular pathways, signaling pathways, that any node touched has an effect on multiple parameters. So, but then the approach that we take in medicinal chemistry is, doesn't matter if it has some side effects, it has to primarily cure the condition to which it is designed for. So every allopathy doctor or every allopathy practitioner and every medicinal chemist, a drug design person in a pharmacology or a pharmaceutical company knows very well that something that is being designed will certainly have a side effect. This is a bottom line. It may not be told, but then the philosophy there is, there's a particular disease condition, I develop a cure for that. If something else happens, let us look at taking another medication to tackle that situation. So that's why I'm sure some of you would have seen your parents taking multiple tablets every day. So the reason is they start with one disease condition, they go to a doctor, he or she is put on one medication. Down the line, they go with another problem or a disease condition, another tablet is added. So this goes on. I'll give you one example. You go with hyperlipidemia, means there's a lot of triglyceride levels, so-called triglyceride levels are very high, or there's a cholesterol being very high. So there's a fear that sets in Will it block some blood vessel and will it lead to some problem? So we go to a doctor and doctor says, okay, take statins. I'm sure all of you would have heard of statins, right? These are very, very widely used anti-hyperlipidemic drugs. So the statins are taken, and the side effect of statins, we know as pharmacologists, is that it has muscle depletion. It reduces the muscle, and glucose metabolism happens in the muscle, right? So we know for certain a person on statins down the line in couple of months or maybe a year of taking statins will develop muscle depletion, which in turn will lead to impairment of glucose metabolism, which in other words is called as diabetes. So the doctor knows when a patient comes and he or she puts him on anti-hyperlipidemic drugs, statins. They know very well that this man is going to come back to me with complaint of diabetes. But then there's no other drug available to control hyperlipidemia. You understand the doctor's condition? Their hands are tied. There's no other solution. So the solution is there, but the solution leads to another problem. So when they go with diabetes, they are put on another drug, which is for diabetes. So this goes on. So finally, the patient lands up taking a handful of drugs, sometimes more than the snacks that they eat, they take the drugs, right? The tablets. So that's the kind of, so this approach, after a while of doing this drug discovery, I realized I'm not doing sensible work. I'm not doing something that is going to benefit the customer or the consumer, the end consumer. See, finally, what we do, the one passion that has been driving me is finally what we do has to do a lasting good to the consumer. Otherwise, there's no point doing our research, doing our business, right? So I thought certainly allopathy is not the way. It is, see, it has its place. I will not say it's very bad or deny its importance. It has its place. It has its place in case of emergency conditions. There's no other medication or the medical approach that is available to humankind at this point of time other than going for allopathic medication when it is emergency. When there is an emergency condition, when there's an accident, when there is say heart attack or any emergency condition, an ICU condition, allopathy is the way to set the body right back to its normal condition. But certainly it is not meant for day-to-day problems. It is not meant for non-communicable diseases. It is not meant for common cold and cough. It is not meant for diarrhea. It is not meant for any of the common ailments that you, at least the major population, you and me have on a normal given day. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to give a drug which is meant for severe acute condition to a person who is just a mild symptomatic, and that further destroys their health. So I hope you understood what is the problem with the present day modern medicine. It is valuable, but then it has its place in our healthcare. It is not meant to be taken for any of the common ailments. Unfortunately, temperature raises, we give off paracetamol. Stomach ache, we give off antacids. Diarrhea, we give off something which is a something like these. What are the common one that is used? I forget the name, yeah, but we use. Yeah. Yeah, Tiwari.
Yeah, norfloxacin, imidazole.
Norfloxacin, that's antibiotic. So
yeah.
Metronidazole.
Metronidazole, correct. Yeah. So which is a anti-amoeba big drug. So and then slight amount of sore throat, we go for antibiotics. So the problem is antibiotics are valuable, but they are valuable, as I said, when there's an acute condition. In a normal condition, antibiotic taken disrupts the whole gut microbiome. So it again, to reset it is not a easy task. So this is where we need to there then it started dawning on me, and I'm sure all across they started thinking that this is not the solution for a good healthcare solution platform. It has its place, let it go on, but we have to in parallel develop a very powerful healthcare platform which is meant for common conditions, which is meant for preventive healthcare. It should not allow the person, if some early disease state is identified, right, it should not, we should be able to give medication to such people in such a way that they don't become patients down the line, they don't fall sick, they don't develop a chronic condition. So this should be the target. So obviously now I hope you have understood when I have given you this background, how do we go about doing it? We certainly cannot take two new chemical entities which have high specificity, we say nanomolar specificity. Only if a molecule has nanomolar specificity is the first filter for us to take it to a, we call it druggable molecule. Only then it becomes a druggable molecule. Then we have, of course, other filters. I will not go through that pharma route for you. So we need to obviously look at something which is not as highly specific as these new chemical entities. First point. We need to look at molecules which interact with multiple nodes and not a single node in the cell signaling pathways. Because as I told you right at the beginning, the cell signaling pathways are, it's a mesh, it's interconnected mesh. So I should not target a single node, I should target multiple nodes. So I need to have molecules which will target multiple nodes. I need to have molecules which will target them in a mild way, in a reversible manner, in not an irreversible way, so that they create a side effect. So if these two are taken care, then the side effects will be much lesser. Also, I may have to look at multiple molecules which will target multiple nodes, so that the whole cellular system is modulated rather than one single node. So I don't interfere with the system, but I modulate the system. I hope you are able to understand the difference between the two. One is interference, other is modulation. So I should move away from interference to modulation. I should move away from coerciveness to suggestion. In case we talk about human behavior, yeah, one way is to be a dictator and say this has to be done. Other way is to make them understand, make your team members come round to working in a manner that it is for overall good. Make them understand what they need to do. So it is something very similar at a cellular level. I should not coerce the cellular system to function in a particular way, but I should help it function in such a way that there's a holistic health across the cell, right? So this is what I need to target. And for this, there are no better molecules than naturally occurring molecules, what we call as nutraceuticals. Why are nutraceuticals important? It is because of this fundamental reason that they are valuable. They target multiple nodes. They do not have high specificity. They have very low specificity, in fact. If you go as per the pharma standards, none of these nutraceutical molecules are druggable, right? According to pharma standards, they are not druggable molecules. But then for the purpose of preventive healthcare, they are the molecules which are to be taken forward. Why? Because they are not specific. They will only modulate. They will not interfere with the cellular system, and they will target multiple sites, multiple nodes. So nutraceuticals therefore are invaluable asset for preventive healthcare, for common ailments, for managing common ailments, for developing preventive healthcare strategies. All of you, that is the reason you have to start looking at nutraceuticals and how to make them valuable resources, how to deliver them in formats that are effective and convenient to the consumer is what, as youngsters, you need to real, because there's a lot of scope there. See, again, there is one more separation, or what should I say, categorization that you need to understand. There's another set of molecules which are also natural, which we call as phytoactives or ayurcetics, sometimes they call as. So these are molecules which act more or less like drug molecules. They are in between. You have at one end of the spectrum drug molecules, which is modern medicine, new chemical entities. Other end of the spectrum, you have nutraceuticals. In between falls these phytoactives, which are from, see, the difference between nutraceutical and phytoactives, I'll make it clear uh, by repeating this statement. Nutraceuticals are molecules from constituents which form the food chain. Anything that comes from our food chain is a nutraceutical. Means I consume lemon. Molecules that come out of lemon are nutraceuticals. I consume an apple. Molecules coming out of an apple are nutraceuticals. Coming out, I mean molecules which are already there. It's not that they come out. They come out inside our gut. That's a different matter. But what I mean by saying molecules coming out means molecules which are components of secondary molecules. These are small molecules which are components of apples, which are components of all our vegetables, fruits, our fermented foods that we eat, our rice, our wheat. All, there are lots of small molecules which are components of this. Most common ones which you know are vitamins and minerals, but they are only one very small subset. You have a whole lot of antioxidants. You have a whole lot of nutraceuticals which have multiple functions in the body. Multiple. So these are very, very valuable molecules. I'll tell you why they are valuable. Okay. I think I will take you through this new theory, new work that is being done across, which is called as xenoharmosis. You can actually Google it and see. XENOHORMESIS, xenoharmosis. Okay. So this xenoharmosis, what is the theory all about? See, plant produces, see, everything we get from plants, right? And plants produce two kinds of molecules. Broadly speaking, I'm simplifying the whole thing. One is big molecules, that is what we call biomolecules, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. The other set of molecules are small molecules, all small molecules, right? I hope I'm not going too technical. How are the students taking? Can I just get a response?
Dr. Anil, you can certainly continue. It's very enjoyable because
Yes.
they're mostly with B-Farm background and they are working on a very similar type of brands which we are actually having.
Okay then. Yeah.
Absolutely striking the chord. Fantastic.
Okay. Right then. So this plants broadly produce two kinds of molecules. One is small molecules, another big molecules, right? Big molecules are produced as a process of the primary metabolism, but the small molecules plant produces as a response to stress. It has a biotic or a abiotic stress. What is a abiotic stress? There's more of moisture, there is less of moisture, there's more of temperatures, less of temperatures, very cold temperatures, very hot temperatures, right? There's no water available, it's completely barren, right? There's too much water content, all kinds of stress. See, one fundamental thing all of us have to understand: humans and animals have the ability to move. There is a rain outside, we run under a shelter, right? There's extreme heat somewhere, we go under shade. But think of plants. They have no way to move out of where they are. Okay. So no matter what happens in the environment, they have to stand and survive. So that should give you an idea that their defense system is the best, most advanced defense system as compared to animal defense system. You understand? And therefore, when they produce molecules in response to the stress that they are facing, those molecules, and one thing, if you go into molecular biology, there are number of biochemical pathways which are conserved across plant to humans, not just animal, not just insect, till humans. For example, heat shock proteins, if you Google it, you will see they are the first response when there is stress. The whole heat shock protein cycle is conserved, means it's the same as it is in the plants, in humans. Why has nature done this? Because humans consume plants. Plant molecules that the plants are producing for stress help us in responding to the same stress factors. That is why in Ayurveda there's a beautiful principle. Now we are able to understand it. They say if you are living in a particular place, eat the food that is grown in that place, you will be healthy. You are all in Mumbai, eat the food that is grown in and around Mumbai. Don't get food that is grown in New Zealand. Kiwi fruit from New Zealand is nutritious. Nonsense. It will not be nutritious to us, right? But if it is grown in and around Mumbai, eat those fruits and vegetables. They will naturally give you health, because your body gets attuned and prepared to fight the stress that the plants are already facing in that area, in that region. So body becomes more healthier to fight. This is what is a theory called xenoharmosis. The plants give us the cue and set our biological system ready to fight the stress that is there in that region. So that is why eating McDonald's and KFCs, where the things are brought from abroad, is a complete nonsense. None of them are going to be healthy to us. The cheese brought from Sweden is not going to be healthy to you and me. The cheese made in your local area is going to give you health. Please understand that. This is scientific. I'm not talking some belief and wanting to support present government and say go local, right? Which is the right way, certainly. But there's a whole science behind it, especially for healthcare. You need to, because plants develop these small molecules are all produced in response to stress. Plant responds to the stress factors, produces the small molecules, fights the stress through those molecules. We consume those molecules, and our biological systems become ready enough to fight the similar stress conditions. So what do you take from this now? A take-home lesson is, one thing, of course, eat the local produce. The second important thing is, with respect to your business, these small molecules are stress busters. These small molecules have the ability to fight stress, all kinds of stress, whether it is a biotic stress or abiotic stress. Therefore, these small molecules are what we call as nutraceuticals. Therefore, you now understand the power of nutraceuticals. They are extremely powerful for maintaining the health of a person. See, there's a very two different things. One is curing the disease condition, other is maintenance of health. In Ayurveda, we call this as swasthya. Maintaining health is far more valuable than curing a disease state. And for maintaining health, there can be no better molecules than nutraceuticals, because now I hope you have understood the whole idea of why nutraceuticals are scientifically valuable molecules for maintaining health, right? So nutraceuticals are all molecules produced from our food chain. Whatever we consume, either on a daily basis or on a seasonal basis, it doesn't matter. We consume mango seasonally, but doesn't matter. Molecules that are components of mango are all nutraceuticals for us. Some regions consume banana fruit, some banana flower, some consume banana stem. Each of them have valuable molecules which have tremendous effect on our, in fact, banana constituents are very, very valuable to fight Alzheimer's, dementia. They're so valuable molecules there. So all these things are, in fact, there are lots of untapped resources in our own food chain. So this is something that as youngsters you should look into. There are number of exotic foods in various parts of our country where the local regions are consuming it, but it's not actually spread across. So what are the molecules in them? What do they do? How do they interact? And how can we use them for, is something that as youngsters, all of you should look at. And there's a huge scope in making good business out of it. And at the same time, giving valuable products to the consumer. See, none of these products will have ill health effects. They will not have side effects. They will do the, in fact, what we are working on are trying to work on combinations of these nutraceuticals, which will be as powerful as APIs. So we are wanting to call them therapeutic nutraceuticals. One more subsection we are creating in nutraceuticals. These could be prescribed by doctor as a therapy. So we are wanting to come up with that kind of combinations, but they will have all the goodness of curing a disease, but they will not have the side effects because their inherent methodology or mechanism of action or mode of function is not like the pharma products. So that's a very valuable or a powerful opportunity that is out there. Then before I digress, how do we differentiate phytoceutics from, or ayurvedics from nutraceuticals? So these are phytoceutics and ayurvedics are molecules which are not from our food chain. All the same, they are molecules from nature. Okay, so they are from medicinal herbs. Say a molecule from ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is not taken every day, right? It's not a part of our food chain. So molecules that come out of ashwagandha or ashwagandha product itself, powder itself, is not a nutraceutical, but it's a phytoactive. I hope you are able to make out the difference. They are two different things. And phytoactives have their role. They are very, very effective. They are as effective as the pharma products. That's where the whole of Ayurveda and popularizing Ayurveda. Fortunately, one good thing that COVID has done is it has given a tremendous boost to alternate our traditional medical practices. Ayurveda is really getting a attention across the country, especially government also is looking at it in a serious way. So hopefully it will become as important a medical practice as the existing modern day medicine. I think COVID will do this good to us. In fact, just to tell you, we are working quite seriously with government to try to popularize the Ayurvedic or the traditional medicines across the country for preventive healthcare strategies. So there's a lot of opportunity in Ayurveda for preventive healthcare. In fact, those of you who want to work on preventive healthcare through Ayurveda, there are number of, in fact, Ayurveda, the first thing that is taught to a doctor is to work on the preventive healthcare, then look at curative. But unfortunately, what has happened is, I spoke to a lot of Ayurvedic physicians. What they were saying is, a normal person does not come to them to help them maintain health. So their usage of their own knowledge also is going away, and therefore their expertise in preventive healthcare is slowly diminishing. They are also becoming completely disease oriented, unfortunately. But actually Ayurveda is first thing. In fact, the very opening sentence poem, a Sanskrit poem, which is taught to an Ayurvedic doctor, is first give attention to preventive healthcare, maintain the health of the person. Swasthya swasthya shubham. I forget the exact statement. So you maintain the health of a person is the first statement that is given to Ayurvedic doctor. Then comes the you cure the disease state. But unfortunately, that first sentence, the Ayurvedic doctors themselves are saying they are unable to practice it because survival. They are no one is going to them to help them maintain. Earlier, there was a concept of family physician, so they used to regularly interact and ensure that health is maintained. And there are lots of things called as Ritucharya, Dinacharya, means what should be done over a day. Ritucharya, what should be done during a season, right? So many, right from what should be the Abhyanga, means what should be the oils that should be used for massaging, what massages should be done on a day-to-day basis, what should be the nasal drops that should be taken, what should be the ear drops that should be taken on a day-to-day basis. Everything is defined. to ensure that a good health is maintained. So these are all things which you can tap into. These are good business opportunities which could be really tapped into. Those of you who are wanting to, they are really valuable, and if you can make them available in the formats that are easy to use for the present, and at obviously at an affordable price to the Indian consumer, there's a lot of opportunity. So this is, so I hope you understood the three categories: the API category, the phytoceutics or ayurceutics or phytoactives or bioactives category, and then you have the nutraceuticals category, right? So each of them have their role. Each of them have immense potential. And what I would suggest, means my journey has been this: I moved from the spectrum of a curative and a palliative condition of pharma to the preventive healthcare, because there's a lot of knowledge in our country on preventive healthcare strategies, and I think we should make use of this knowledge to really make preventive healthcare a reality for an Indian consumer. It has to become a day-to-day practice for Indian consumer. It has to become a reality for Indian consumer. And don't look at preventive healthcare and nutraceuticals purely as vitamins, amino acids, and minerals. There's a lot more than just these. These are valuable, but there's a lot more than just these. So these are the opportunities. Now coming to the challenges of nutraceuticals. What are the challenges? Are there any challenges out there? Yes, there are challenges. The first and the foremost challenge is there's no study done to date defining the RDA or RDI of any of these nutraceuticals properly. Means, what is the regular dosage, regular daily allowance for a given nutraceutical? We really don't know. That's one problem. The second very important problem is nutraceutical taken as a supplement is also getting supplemented in the daily food that the consumer is taking. And you all know across India how the food changes. In fact, house to house food changes in our country. It's not just across India. Within a house to another house, there is a change in food habits. So what are the kinds of nutraceuticals that are already being taken as a part of the regular daily food consumption? How do they interfere, or what will happen if a supplement is taken with that kind of food condition? So at what level should I keep the nutraceutical in my product? These are actually challenges. You need to really understand, because anything taken beyond a point is toxic. See, there is a statement by which is a way of putting our human system. Just as we have limited companies, even our human body is a limited company. In fact, Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says it by one single sentence: Nashreyo niyamam vina. Beautiful sentence. All of us have to remember all our life actually. Nashreyo niyamam vina means there is no growth. Shreyas means growth. There's no growth towards happiness without niyamam, means without limit, without discipline. Right? Beyond a limit, nothing is safe for human system. Everything has to be within the tolerance limits. So just because it's a part of food chain does not mean it can be consumed beyond tolerance limits, right? So it has to be consumed within limits. Beyond limit, even a nutraceutical might turn out to be poisonous or problem creating. I won't say poisonous, it's too powerful a word. It will be problem creating. So this is where the challenge for nutraceuticals. How do I determine what is the tolerance limit for a nutraceutical? Yes, we know for certain the tolerance limit for nutraceuticals is far higher, far broader as compared to a pharma product. Agreed. But still we don't know what is the limit, right? Even for vitamins and minerals, there is some RDA at least defined, but even that is not very well defined RDA. Not proper clinical trials have been done. That I'll not go into that. but at least something has been defined. For nutraceuticals, unfortunately, this is still not done. So that's an area which has to be looked at. That's an area which has to be given attention to ensure that we are giving products which are completely safe. At no point, no matter what kind of food is consumed by the consumer, this will not create any further problem. So this is a very valuable, this is a challenge which is a very realistic challenge, though not spoken across in the nutra industry outside. It's a technically, if you really go in depth into the subject, this is a challenge that is has to be looked at. The second important challenge is its interaction with other food material. So when it is taken by itself is one absorption, but when it is taken along with other food substances in the body, what happens to its bioavailability? There's one another challenge. In fact, nutraceuticals, when they are isolated from their natural condition, their whole bioavailability gets altered. So how do I ensure the bioavailability is good enough? Of course, there are lots of formulation opportunities right now. There are so many formulation strategies that are available to modulate and improve the bioavailability. So it's not so much of a challenge, but all the same, it's a challenge which has to be looked at. The PK properties, to put it broadly, the pharmacokinetic properties of nutraceuticals, when they are isolated, is very different as to when they are in their natural format or natural fabric, right? So we need to look into it. So in case we are taking it out of their natural resource, means we are, it's a, instead of taking it from giving it as a leaf powder, we have isolated the molecule out. Then we need to look at this molecule's bioavailability, permeability in a greater depth to ensure that it is as close to nature biomimetic as possible. So this is another important challenge that is out there for nutraceuticals. And then, of course, the third very important challenge from a business perspective is the challenge of label claims. It's the one of the reasons why nutra industry is really not taking off is everything is claimed for a given. The most common example I'll take is curcumin. You take a curcumin bottle, they say it's a cure for cancer. To any kind of disease you talk of, they'll say cancer, curcumin is a cure. So it's not possible that one nutraceutical can be a solution for all given conditions. First point. Second very important point is positioning this nutraceutical for a disease state is a wrong approach, completely wrong approach, which instead position it for maintenance of health. It is far, far better. Unfortunately, what's happening is in this race with pharma products, nutraceuticals are also being pushed into the segment of wanting to position them against disease conditions. So it's a huge challenge. If that is done, then we clinical trials have to be very, very carefully done, because as I told you, the same molecules come through even food. So their food has to be carefully monitored to ensure that this nutraceutical is not being. So clinical trials are not that easy for nutraceuticals as compared to pharma products, because pharma product is a completely new chemical entity. So it's not got through any other food, right? Whereas a nutraceutical, you want to do a clinical trial, it's a huge challenge. So costs go up. Designing of clinical trial is not easy. So instead, what I would suggest is position the nutraceuticals not for disease conditions, but for preventive healthcare strategies. That becomes easier. But even there, the challenge is, how do I prove the statement that it is preventive healthcare, that it is maintaining health and preventing the disease, onset of disease. Again, the challenge there is, how do I find early biomarkers for a given disease state? And how do I show to the consumer that taken this nutraceutical, that particular biomarker does not get upregulated or downregulated or whatever, right? So there has to be, these are the challenges. So when we get into the hardcore business of developing these novel nutraceuticals, this is another very a challenge which we need to face. So these are broadly the challenges of nutraceuticals. Other than that, of course, the nutraceutical, what are the varieties of nutraceuticals that we have? Probiotics, prebiotics. These are, in fact, as you all know, I should touch upon that without getting into probiotics. Touching only nutraceuticals is not the right way for preventive healthcare, because you know now that microorganisms are integral part of our body. They are, in fact, they outnumber our human cells, host cells. But more than that, they are integral part of almost every function of our body, no matter whether it's a function of brain, function of uh, gut, function of immunity, whatever. Mention a, a function of the human system, microorganisms play a role in it. So how do we ensure that these microorganisms, and one thumb rule, of course, very difficult to find thumb rules in probiotics and gut microbiome, but one thumb rule which I have experienced, discovered for myself, which I would like to share with you all, is the more the diversity of our gut microbiome, the more healthier it is. How do I say it? Of course, there are lots of research findings for that, publications, but more than that, I'll give you a simple analogy. You go into a forest, right? We don't spray pesticides, we don't give fertilizers, we don't spray insecticides, but the plants are healthy. Have you ever thought of this? Whereas go into your own fields, crops, where crops are being grown, or even gardens, right? We need to spray pesticides, we need to give fertilizers. Why? Have you ever questioned? Reason is there is greater diversity in a forest setting. You have all kinds of plants there, all kinds of herbs, all kinds of ferns, all kinds. The more diverse a forest is, the more healthier a forest is. You go and ask any um, student of agriculture or forestry, they will tell you this fundamental thing: the more diverse plant life in the forest, the more healthier the forest is, right? Why is in garden what happens, or in crop what happens? It's on monoculture. You have removed all diversity, single paddy field is there, right? So we naturally have to protect it. So even for gut microbiome, gut, the microbiome that is there in gut, the more diverse it is, the more healthier it is. As it starts losing diversity, it starts becoming diseased. So the target through probiotics should be to expand this diversity. Any organism which is trying to overpower the rest of the organisms and killing them and trying to colonize widely should be killed, right? Diversity should be allowed to happen in the gut. So this is a very new concept in probiotics. You will not get this in books, but then this is a thing that has to be looked at. Probiotics developed to maintain the diversity of gut microbiome is a valuable way to ensure that there's a greater health of gut, and gut health is related to brain function. Gut health is related to immunity. You know, a number of things it's related to. So, in other words, in fact, just to take again a cue and take you back into traditional medicine, an Ayurvedic doctor, if I don't know any of you have ever gone to them or whether you continue to go to them, first thing they treat is they treat your stomach, your gut. Then they treat the disease. Somehow Ayurveda knew this beforehand. You set the gut right first, and then the rest of the body automatically sets itself right. If it doesn't, then you start treating those disease conditions. That is the approach that Ayurvedic doctors take. So probiotics have invaluable, pro and pre, of course, together have invaluable position in our maintenance of health. So those have to be looked at as integral component of nutraceuticals for developing preventive healthcare strategies. Okay, so I think I've gone on for quite a bit of time. If I can take some questions, uh, whatever Tiwariji, whatever you say now. I hope it was good enough, and I've been on the topic and not digressed. I hope it has
Uh,
been an hour almost. Yeah.
Dr. Anil, hearing a scientist like you, who is an ocean of this knowledge, Gyan Sagar, I think I wish that the time would have just continued like that. It was resonating every bit of that journey which actually you went through as a scientist and I went through as a commoner. You know, as a common man in marketing,
Perfect.
so in pharmaceuticals with GSK, Novartis and all, we have sold all those pharmaceutical chemicals. And I always have seen
Yeah.
actually through my own eyes, my own relatives, many a times how exactly, and those clinical trials which they boast of, after 10 years, 20 years, they
Yeah.
withdraw the trial, they come with a different report like statins causing diabetes. My own mother, I mean,
Yeah.
she has been on, and then, so you realize what exactly these clinical trials are really so worthy for.
Not
However,
at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
so actually, I just know I'm trying to summarize your wonderful talk. Probably that will also bring in a context to the next speaker,
Yeah.
who is Dr. Tony Parmar. He is the managing director of Albert David. And before that, I actually would like to make a small bridge between you, Dr. Tony Parmar, and the interns who are here on this call. I would just like to couple of thoughts. Just want to reciprocate on what you just mentioned, and they are also in some form of some questions also, doctor,
Yeah.
which I always wanted to ask a learned person but never found. It's like, no, you are searching for a guru and then you still know you are 50 and then you still not. So I think you, in you, I see someone who has given me a confidence or, an assurance that the business that, has been started actually has got really a wonderful destination and a truthful meaning to serve the society better. What has got born out of my initial impulses, I will say, 2 years back when Volsante was founded, when I hear you today, and actually those impulses came from my own research and work and many students who worked with me at Narsee Monjee Institute, but we were all commercial people. We were not scientists actually. I am a chemical technologist, so from that perspective, I have some
Yeah.
affinity to this, phytoceuticals, bioactives, and all these terminologies. I started liking them. But I think the way you explained it today, honestly, eyes have got wide open, and it has sunk into the mind and heart, and gave me a lot of confidence that probably I am on the right path. The team is on the right path. We all are on the right
Yes.
path.
Certainly.
But I have
Yes.
some questions, doctor, here. If you allow me, I can actually ask you a couple of those because I'm being
Sure.
greedy.
Sure.
Instead of the interns, I'm
Yeah.
asking it
Yeah. Yeah.
first.
Go ahead.
And actually, I feel little agitated when I'm asking this question, not at anybody, but at ourselves. Now, we come from a culture or a society which is thousands of years old, all that ancient wisdom which came before Hippocrates. My question is that all this knowledge of Ayurveda, whether you call it as Ayurceutical, nutraceutical, actually in one of the NABI or CIAB meetings at Chandigarh, I met the person who was actually the designer of all this Ayurvedic, probably the like how FSSAI is,
Yeah.
Dr. Sharma, I think, I'm not remembering his full
Yeah.
name. So my question is that when all this ancient wisdom knowledge has been there, look at the history of healthcare, it has evolved. There was a time when people started dying of the diseases and infections. And when I was mentioning to you the diarrhea and norfloxacin with metronidazole, I have seen doctors prescribing both an antibiotic and antiparasitic like this, particularly, uh, you know, because they feel that antibiotics are cure for everything. If they think there's an infection, they will write it.
Yeah.
So pharmaceuticals started getting overprescribed, getting overused. People started minting money out of that business.
Yeah.
There is a huge industry of trillions of dollars globally, which actually all these big pharma companies have created. So my question is it that this money power was something which was on the wrong side of the table, that we could not do all this?
Yeah. Yeah. Partly so. It's not the sole reason. It's one of the reasons. See, when I interact with these Ayurvedic doctors and academicians, for that matter, from at BHU, there's a very big Ayurvedic college with whom the professors of those college, I interact with them quite extensively. what they feel is the funding is not as much as the funding that is available for say ICMR institutes, right? So there is a problem of funding. I will not deny that there is a problem of funding, and that is at the same time I will not say that's the sole reason why the healthcare in preventive or Ayurveda or traditional medicines have not taken off. There has been a lack of confidence in the practitioners too. I will put it that way, which is now slowly building up, fortunately.
And doctor, the vicious effect of this is actually the 45, 43 students or interns who are on this call. After this call and hearing both of us, they will still search for a job with a pharmaceutical company, right?
Yeah, that's because money is there, right?
Exactly. So that is the irony part of it. So I think you are really inspiring. Should not India, like a kind of a country which wants to be and has been Vishwaguru, should do a lot of research and actually put in money to drive this, because we are going to create a new industry altogether.
Yes, that's the reason why when you told me there'll be a lot of interns. See, it's the young minds which have now take this as a passion ahead and move on. And for that matter, I'll tell you my own this one. I moved away from Dr. Reddy's deliberately with a choice. It was not that I had any reason to move out, but I moved out because I was not convinced about what I was doing. So I said, Tata Chemicals said they want to get started with nutraceuticals. So I said, this is an opportunity. Then I moved there. So we have to get passionate about doing something. And I would say youngsters should get passionate. And one thing for certain, if we get passionate, we will find opportunities.
Absolutely.
They will come. They will come. Nature will ensure that things will fall in place and you will get the opportunities.
And doctor, one last reassurance from your side, and then we will go to the interns quickly. You were talking about the entire spectrum of food, functional food, medical foods, medical nutrition, and on the extreme right hand side the drugs, right? And phytoactives, phytonutrients, bioactives, all those actually becoming a part of that space. What we did actually analysis, and please tell us if we are wrong in that, but I'll tell you, drugs are on one side of a complicated system where you have a lot of innovative molecules, new chemical entities, biologicals, and all those things, up to remdesivir now hopefully coming to the rescue of the COVID guys. But and on the other extreme, when you talk about nanotechnology or different types of bioactives or phytoactives which are druggable, as you say, we could find actually a smaller opportunity, but I think that is even far more sensible. Not I'm saying far more, sorry. I mean, it is certainly sensible to get started with. Now, point I'm trying to drive is the nutrient part. So all these students actually are doing a disease dynamics understanding. So they are studying diabetes, for example. And they are also trying to see what role does vitamin D3 have in diabetes. Or if they are trying to find out that metformin causes vitamin B12 deficiency, then how do you actually supplement with vitamin B12, because metformin is going to be lifelong with a diabetic person. So what, sir, we have done is that we have started actually with the macro and the micronutrient part first. Let people of this country, 73% urban rich people, get protein first, which they are not getting. Let them take vitamin D3 first. But I think certainly we will collaborate with you and actually seek your great support, because that is, if there at all any future is there, that should be the destination which you have just shown us. So I have no words to thank you, millions of that. And I think we go to now to the interns to ask their questions. In terms of time management, doctor, I think let us all extend, because your session was, super exciting and interesting. So we will go to the interns and then we will come to Dr. Parmar to start with the marketing part of it. And I hope you will also find a great synergy between your talk and Dr. Parmar's talk.
Certainly.
So students, over to you all. Please go ahead. Niladri Banerjee.
Hello.
Unmute yourself, otherwise not be audible.
Yes, sir. Sir, with Satya sir's permission, I would like to ask one question. I think the interns are very lucky today to hear you. It was a wonderful session. And sir, being a pioneer yourself, you have achieved a lot in your career, and you have been a young scientist and awarded for that, for achieving. So, sir, I have one question. Why not students and in Indian government also? Why the scientist, being a scientist, is not inculcated within ourselves? Why not we are looked we can search for things, we can research for things, and also the infrastructure, why it's not built for accommodating research and accommodates sustainable research, not just research, because there are many articles that goes on in pharma sectors which are not very useful because research has already been done, or it's kind of experimental, but it's not very useful in that sense, because not new innovations when it comes to drug molecules also is not happening, when it comes to other factors in science is also not happening. So as a CSIF member yourself, what are the suggestions you can give, and even the government is initiating for this young generation also? Because I think with our generation, I think we have lost that opportunity to become scientists ourselves.
No,
Because
no,
I
no.
think,
I would say that.
sir, in a way, it has to be inculcated very
No,
young that you
let
got
me
to
tell you.
find new
Yeah,
things.
yeah, Niladri, good question. Good point you have raised. See, but one thing I want to tell you upfront, compared to say about 2 decades back, about 20 years back, or maybe even a decade back, conditions right now in our country are very, very, very different. The opportunities that are available for startups or business ideas are immense. Apart from that, more than opportunities for a startup to do business, for a idea to come up till a product stage, that is where actually funding is there's a huge chasm. There's not enough funding there, right? Fortunately, now close to 45 organizations, sub-organizations of government are available across India, whether it is in the IITs, whether it is, these we call as incubation cells, right? Lot of funding is being pumped into developing an idea to a product stage. So now I would say your generation is really fortunate. A lot of opportunities are available. Don't be under the impression, or don't get disheartened that there are no opportunities. And let me tell you, becoming scientist is it's only a big word. Anyone who has curiosity is a scientist, according to me. You just have to have
That's right.
curiosity, and every individual has curiosity. So you just uh, pursue your curiosity, pursue your passion, and opportunities are there. Believe me when I say, you just have to Google, and I'll tell you there's so many opportunities. And means there is a national research foundation which is a part of HRD, Ministry of HRD now. Every IIT has an incubation cell. Government DBT gives funding for incubations. You come up with a small idea, but a sensible idea, right? And you say you want to really try and work on it and passionately take it forward. Sky is the limit in the present day in our country. And I would, in fact, given the present conditions across the globe, I would say India is one of the best places right now to do this kind of innovative research, because the money that is available here is not available in even the developed countries right now.
Sir, I have another question with respect to that. How long do you think we can leapfrog America and other leading research countries in terms of good research output? Sir, how long do you think it will take time? Because our young researchers are going abroad and doing MS or whatever they're doing, PhDs are going abroad. So what do you think about that? And also, how long do you think we can leapfrog other nation in terms of not just nuclear research, but also pharmaceutical, nutraceuticals, and science research?
I would put it this way: it's all dependent on your generation. How much your generation is willing to put their heart and soul into this. It's as because resources are available now, and it's just a question of how much you want to put in. That's first point. The second important point is, see, that in research we talk of two kinds of research. One we say as blue sky research, and other one is the research which is application oriented research, right? So I would say that right now looking at application oriented research is far more valuable for the country than doing blue sky research. Blue sky research will get you Nobel Prizes, which will get you publications in Nature and so on. But it has its role, but it may not be the one that is to be taken up by a developing country. We need to look at application oriented science right now, make the lives of our fellow Indians better, and then move on when there's enough and extra of money available. See, it's like, I'll give you one analogy. When was arts, if you see history, I'm sure all of you have read history in your schools. When was art and culture and artists encouraged in any kingdom? Take Gupta dynasty, right? Only when the kingdom is doing really well, when there's extra wealth available, expendable wealth available, arts become very prominent then, right? So blue
Yes.
sky research is like that. Blue sky research is when there is a lot of extra funding available, right? We need to reach to that stage. Right now it is, we have to do application science to make India come up to that level, and then there's a lot of extra funding available. We can do art in science, which is all blue sky research. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Hello,
sir.
Thank
hello,
you.
sir.
Next question,
So I
please.
have one question, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Sarvesh here from, actually I'm a part of the commercial team for healthcare business at Volsante.
Good. Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't hold myself back from taking this opportunity to ask you this. And also I would like to share one experience, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, I would like to say that we share one thing in common, that is our background through Tata. So even I have worked with Tata before.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Good.
So actually, so so in my role, so I meet a lot of doctors, dietitians, physiotherapists, all these healthcare providers like on daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like we discussed, that the role of nutraceuticals should be in preventive nutrition, but also it should lead somewhere to therapy management.
Yes.
And so, as a part of our role, I meet a lot of orthopedics and gynecologists for that matter, which is a delicate condition. And so I would like to actually say this, that one of our product, which is Calgel XT.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not just saying this because it's our product, but because the science, and it is totally in sync with what you have said. So since it's a plant-based product, the vitamin D3 is also from Cladonia rangiferina, which is a rare source for vitamin D3, a veg
Mm-hmm.
source. So it has been appreciated like anything. I mean, doctors have given us handwritten letters for that. Whenever
Great.
we go there, they
Very
have
good.
replaced all the calciums with that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I wanted this opportunity to, share this with you.
I would say, Sarvesh, I would say this is just the beginning.
Definitely, sir.
Lots of the APIs will get replaced by nutraceuticals.
So
You
actually,
see down the
yeah.
line, it will happen, and we will make it happen.
Definitely, sir. And actually, sir, and I would say that when I started, I went to Bombay Hospital, which is like biggest hospital in Mumbai. I met the HOD for ortho after 8 hours of wait, and sir, I would say it was worth it, because that guy, after his 40 years of practice, he now says that he has found the right calcium, which has no side effects. Otherwise, there's
Okay.
bloating, constipation, nausea, a lot of things with
Yeah,
it.
calcium is such a big headache.
Definitely, sir. And sir, I would say that like how we spoke about curcumin, we have curcumin milk, golden milk, a lot of things coming up.
Yeah.
So coming to my question, actually, sir, I was just thinking about the market, Indian market. There is a lot of probiotic products floating around the market, which is laden with sugar, and they are milk based. So, like we were, developing something soy milk based product. So I was just keen to know more about the applications of prebiotics and probiotics together, which in synergy becomes, I think, symbiotics.
Yeah.
So, sir, what are the applications and advantages of symbiotics considering the Indian market and our population?
Oh, it's a wide topic, but to give you a gist of it, symbiotics can be taken mainly for immunity. Boosting the general immunity, symbiotics are valuable products. So if you are looking at symbiotics, first try to target immunity, right?
Yes, sir.
Then for bone health also, in fact, symbiotics are very valuable.
Fantastic. So thank you
you,
very
sir.
much. Some people had raised hands. In fact, we missed them. Two girls have raised. Please go ahead in that order.
Hello,
of-
sir. Sir, I have a question. This is Amal here.
Yeah.
Hello, Anil sir. Thank you
Yeah,
so
go
much
ahead.
for this wonderful session, sir. It was really helpful. I have a question from the product perspective. What will be the right approach to market and pitch a nutraceutical product in a country like India, sir? Uh, I would like to hear your perspective on this, sir.
uh, don't I would say first and foremost, because see, consumers across are getting confused as well as losing confidence if you claim everything under the sky with nutraceuticals. So don't overclaim. First point is that tell what that nutraceutical stands for and what it is well established for. That's it, right? If at all clinical trials have been done by the company, yes, you can talk about it. Even otherwise, it's best to just focus on its primary role rather than see, every nutraceutical has multiple roles because of its ability to target multiple targets, right? So it's best to be speak only in a focused manner. I think that would help a lot. Build a storyline in as focused manner as possible. That will give confidence to the consumer.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sir, once again, thank you very, very much.